Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. Today we'll be exploring some of the latest research in nutrition. With me is Dr. Kenneth R. Pelletier, who is professor of medicine at the University of California Medical Center in San Francisco. He is the author of many books on integrative health, including Change Your Genes, Change Your Life, Mind is Healer, Mind is Slayer, Sound Mind, Sound Body, and Longevity. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
It's a pleasure to be with you once again. Thank you so much for making the time available.
Oh, thank you as well. It's always a pleasure.
And when it comes to nutrition, I think many people are so confused because at one time we were told don't eat fats, eat carbs. And now we're told don't eat carbs, fats are good. And cholesterol was at one time bad, and now we know there's such a thing as good cholesterol. I think the average person doesn't know what to believe anymore.
Well, it's not just the average person, it's the profession. Physicians, researchers, public health, national organizations, the Heart Association, Cancer Society. So it's a barrage of contradictory, inaccurate, partially documented information. So you have ketogenic diet, Paleolithic diets, vegetarian, non-vegetarian, high carb, low carb. And then you interdisperse with that the various forms of fasting. You fast once a week, once a month, for 3 days, 2 days. So all of the issues around fasting and life extension. And so, people are totally confused. I mean, publishers laugh and they say, if you want to, write a book and earn money, pick a topic, pick anything and apply it to diet. So it could be bitter cherries and living longer, and write a book about that. It'll sell. And it'll be involved in a controversy, and the controversy will fuel sales, and you'll do fine. So there's a cynicism. I mean, the number of times I've had editors say, just write a diet book, and just laugh, because that is, for the public, kind of catnip. The diet of the day. Now we have the celery fast. And anything you can think of.
I went on the pineapple diet.
The pineapple diet, perfect. There's another one. Yeah, exactly. Okay, right. Good examples of the barrage of conflicting information, contradictory, often contradictory. As you point out, high fat, low fat, high carb, low carb. Those are still extant now in a dietary.
Well, I might just say, since we're talking about diets, I went on a diet not long ago, and I lost about 30 pounds.
Yes.
Kept most of it off. I'm very happy about that. But my primary method is what I call my diet diary. I don't worry about following a particular regimen. I find that if I persist in just recording what I'm eating and paying attention to the calories, over time that works for me. It's more of a lifestyle, not a diet.
That's perfect. Because there was a study done in the Journal of the American Medical Association that looked at 10 or 12 of the most popular diets and followed them for 1 year. And what they found is that every diet worked for 6 months. Everybody lost weight, improved their health for 6 months. And the speculation, or the hypothesis, was it wasn't because of the diet, it's because you were paying attention, which is what you're doing with your food diary. If you pay attention to what you're eating, you will make positive changes. It will impact your weight, your health, your longevity, etc. But they also found is that at 1 year, everyone had regressed back. So all the weight that was lost, you're good to have maintained your weight. All the weight that was lost regressed back, and people were essentially where they started at the beginning of the year, except for one, which I think was interesting, and it was Weight Watchers. Now, Weight Watchers is not a healthy diet. The food quality and the non-organic nature of the product is really pretty awful. But What they do have is tremendous social support. You have a friend you interact with, you have groups, you have constant communications, you have foods that are prepared for you. So it's really the sustained change over time that made all the difference for Weight Watchers, not the quality of the food, not the specific dietary recommendations, but it's simply they got people to stick to it.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned the problem with non-organic food, and
yes.
I think that also came up in our discussion of epigenetics. We know that some of the chemicals that get into non-organic foods actually can have an adverse effect on the epigenetic structures.
Correct. One of the things we know is that food diet has the most dramatic impact on the epigenetic expression. So the gene, in the process of expressing itself, either hyper or hypoarousal for the gene, is directly impacted by diet, by the components of diet along predictable, mappable biochemical pathways. That's very, very clear. We also know that pesticides, herbicides, are toxic to the gene. So my book title, Change Your Genes, is we talked about a gotcha title.
Yeah.
Genes do not change, but they can be damaged. They can be damaged by radiation. They can be damaged by herbicides, damaged by pesticides, which makes me very concerned about Roundup and the controversy with Monsanto, because there was a study that came out 2 weeks ago that they actually found glycosides, which are the organic entity in a Roundup, in the plankton in Antarctica. So virtually every life form on the planet has some form of Roundup in it, and it is a known carcinogen that was deemed to be a possible known carcinogen, which is pretty much its highest rating by the World Health Organization. The US FDA, in its wisdom, has declined to basically identify it as a carcinogen. But there's no question, if you look at the evidence, that Roundup is a carcinogen and it damages the DNA. So the extent to which we can avoid foods, i.e. most processed foods, canned foods, prepared foods, that contain herbicides from large farms, that we're better off. So organic, and organic is a very particular word. So words like natural mean nothing. That's not a descriptive adjective prescribed by law. Organic can only be used with truly organic products. So we're really talking literally. When it says organic, you will know it. It will say it on the product. Consumers Report does a profile every year. They call it the Dirty Dozen. And it's 12 common high-quality foods that are the most contaminated by pesticides. And some of our foods that we love. So strawberries are always number one, is the most highly contaminated food that you can eat unless it's organic. Kale, which again is the staple for everyone in the organic or in the health food area. Again, I think it's either the second or the third highest most contaminated food with herbicides. So what we realize is that you're ingesting toxins continually when we're eating foods that are prepared from large farming combines. And to the extent to which we can use organic foods, eat non-processed whole foods, we are simply doing our genes and our health and life expectancy a great favor.
I did read a study just a few weeks ago that said that if you start eating organic foods, within 1 week, your body will show a measurable difference in terms of eliminating toxins.
That's actually, I didn't see that study, but I think that's probably true. I mean, our body recycles completely every 7 years. So the body you have today is totally different than you had 7 years ago. Skin, probably, I think the recycling for skin is about 6 months. Organs are, maybe 9 months to a year. So we're continually regenerating our body. And that's, a critical phase, which again is disrupted if we're eating, toxic foods. You're breaking that regenerative cycle, and you're even producing abnormal cells, i.e. cancer predisposition. So I think that study is probably accurate. What we do know from epigenetic testing is that 10 to 12 weeks is the longest period of time it takes your body to completely change its genetic expression. So if you change diet today, 10 to 12 weeks from now, look at your genome, it will be completely changed. And if you make the desirable changes that the assay indicates, you'll have an improved profile.
The genome or the epigenetic markers?
The epigenetic markers. Thank you. The epigenetic markers will all be more positive. We also know that these biomarkers change in seconds and minutes. So what you just had for lunch is affecting your gastrointestinal tract right now. It's changed your biomarkers. What you consume for a fluid, if you're drinking coffee or you're drinking distilled water, whichever, that's going to have, again, an impact. So this is a highly interactive, volatile system. It's always changing. We can move it in a positive. We could also move it toward the negative.
Now, I happen to love sugar. And I know you can get organic food that's full of sugar.
Yes. Well, bad news is, sugar is a toxin. Yeah. Sugar is a poison. It has no nutritive value. In fact, weight gain is not a product so much of fat consumption as it's sugar consumption. So sugar is stored. Basically the excess calories of sugar is stored as fat in the body. Fat per se is mostly digested and not stored. And some of us actually have genetic profiles that we'll call lipid metabolic genes that will digest as much fat as you can possibly consume. So there are people that can eat fat of all kinds and live to be 100. I'm not advising that, but it can be done because of their genetic profile. Other people have to avoid it like the plague. But the one thing we know is that there's no nutritive value to sugar. It is very addictive, but it creates these glycemic spikes. So whenever we consume something, our body will basically immediately metabolize that into simple sugars. We'll get a spike in glycemic response. The pancreas kicks in, and the insulin brings it down to a normal range. And we kind of go along with these spikes and troughs. When you have white sugar, you get an extreme spike, and you get an extreme trough, and then you come back to normal. That's inherently damaging to your cells. And after a while, the pancreas just gets exhausted, and we have pancreatic insufficiency, i.e. type 2 diabetes. So anyway, bad news about white sugar.
Well, you know what I find is it is habit forming, at least, if not addicting for me. But if I do without it, I can go for long periods of time without any sugar.
Yes, that's good. And anything that we're talking about, it doesn't mean eliminate white. I mean, some people are really militant about this. Or eliminate all white sugar, eliminate all fats, eliminate all white bread. I'm not militant about that. Bodies are actually very resilient. We're neither as delicate nor as impervious as we like to think. We can't just eat anything and do fine, and we can eat junk and overcome that influence. So we're neither as delicate or as hardy as we'd like to think. So you can violate the perfect diet, and I know a lot of people who eat a, quote, perfect diet and violate it on a pretty regular basis. Does them no harm.
Okay. Well, a lot of doctors have told me in the past that supplements really don't do any good, that you end up eliminating them. They don't stay in your body anyway.
Well, that's an extreme form. That's kind of the medical myth, if you will, of supplements. So there are two kinds. Your water-soluble supplements like vitamin C is water soluble. You can't overdose. You can take all the vitamin C you like, and except for taxing your kidneys, it's going to be washed out of your system. So you can't really overdose on vitamin C as a water soluble vitamin. There are fat soluble vitamins like vitamin D, where you can in fact develop toxic levels of vitamin D if you're taking too much. So it really is which vitamin supplement are you taking? As far as does one work or the other, that's again a matter of individual biochemistry. So if you're D deficient, and we've done studies with Silicon Valley employees and executives, and what we find is because they're indoors much of the time, they're under fluorescent light, they're working on computers, they're up late at night, they're vitamin D deficient. That has major consequences for osteopetrosis in women, osteoporosis in men. When you give them vitamin D supplementation, it's like a new day. I mean, the deposition of calcium and the bone integrity, et cetera, is increased immensely. So the question is not, the vitamins work or not work. That's kind of like, that's kind of a silly argument. It's which vitamins for your biochemistry work, and that's what these epigenetic assays can tell you exactly what foods work for you metabolically and which ones don't. And it's quite amazing.
There's a lot of individual difference.
Highly.
Yeah. But I gather one thing you do recommend with regard to supplements are the antioxidants.
Correct. So antioxidants are like the tocotrienols, which is a subfraction of vitamin E, very beneficial. Omega-3 fatty acids, which are basically derived from fish oil, derived from basically cold water, line-caught organic fish. Those are very, very good qualities. The other are all the cruciferous vegetables. So if you get any leafy green vegetable, especially kale, again, organic-based foods. So kale, broccoli, all of the tomatoes, anything that's deeply colored, especially green, is inherently antioxidant. And you want to control oxidation because oxidation produces byproducts. Byproducts accumulate, and when they accumulate, cells die. They literally, it's like drowning in garbage dump. I mean, every cell is generating excess byproduct, and when that gets excessive, the cells die. You produce necrosis, or you produce aberrant cells for cancer. So the antioxidants are really critical. My advice is start with your diet and have a lot more antioxidants in your diet. You can get in Whole Foods, you can get juices. People go on juice fasts. That juices that are organic, that are prepared, and you can get green juice and red juice and yellow juices. Those are actually really good to increase the amount of antioxidants in your diet.
So you recommend fasting with juices, a juice fast?
Well, I think there is good evidence for fasting. There are probably a dozen or more different kind of fasts. So there are water fasts, juice fasts, apple fasts, anything you need, cherry fast, pineapple fast, I'm sure. There's a celery fast. That's a certainty. By the way, celery is highly toxic. It's on that list of 12 toxic foods. So if you're going to use celery juicing, you better have it be organic celery, which may not be easy to find. But the periodic fasting, so you might do 1 day a month, you could do 1 day a week, or you can do what they call the 12-hour fast mimicking diet. So you don't eat anything for 12 to 15 hours. So if you eat that last meal at 5 o'clock at night, you do anything until 5 the next morning. That's a fast. That's in effect a 12-hour fast. Those are very beneficial because the weak cells are the ones that are attacked in the process of digestion. So when you have cells that have become senescent or they've gone over their life expectancy, they're aberrant, i.e. they're abnormal, tending toward cancerous cells, they will be purged first. So the fasting is actually a very beneficial. There's also a huge line of research going back to the 1930s indicating that caloric restriction, largely through fasting, is life-enhancing. And you find the telomeres, the marker for aging, are actually elongated after periods of fasting.
Which is a good thing.
So yes, it is a good practice. It's something I do, and I think it's good for people.
When I was much, much younger, I went on a 21-day juice fast.
Yes.
I think I alternated 3 days juice and 3 days water for 21 days. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody else.
Right.
At that point, but I'm glad I did it.
Yeah, I did a 30-day fast a couple of years ago just because I wanted to see what it would do. It was a juice fast. 30 days and lost like 15 plus pounds. That wasn't the objective. I just wanted to see what was it like. I actually, at the end of 30 days, liked it because you realize how much time you save. I mean, how much time is spent preparing foods, eating foods, cleaning up after foods, shopping for foods. And when all you're doing is juicing and then drinking that in quarts over 2 or 3 days, you get this tremendous amount of time. Also, after about the first 3 to 5 days, you're not hungry anymore. I didn't have any hunger pangs, no desperate need for anything. My only thing I noticed after 30 days, I missed crunchy whole grain crackers.
Oh.
That was the first thing I ate when I could start eating foods again, was a crunchy whole grain cracker. It tasted absolutely delicious. So not a practice that I would advise, but I wanted to try it just to see what would happen. Yeah. It was actually quite good. Mentally, you get very alert, very sharp, very bright, a lot of energy. So it's not a bad thing to fast. Quite good, actually.
So if it's done in moderation, right?
Yes, not 30 days. I'd say if you did a week of fast, a day of fasting a week, maybe a 3-day fast once a month, that places you in that range of efficient, effective fasting. So you want to hit this, like everything. You want to hit this plateau where you're not straining your body enough to cause damage, yet you're pushing it enough to basically derive the benefits. And then after a certain point, like maybe it's 10 days, you begin then to have destructive changes in the biome, in your epigenetic expression, and in the kind of digestive process. Then you got to start going downhill. So it's hitting that plateau for all of these things.
And I know that of the various lifestyle diets, the one that you seem to favor is the Mediterranean diet.
Yes, and if you look, I do, and the Mediterranean diet is a diet that was actually discovered or developed or observed by Walter Willett, who's a professor at the Department of Public Health at Harvard. And he looked at the fact that his original research looked at the fact that there's a gradient of heart disease from the Mediterranean up to the Scandinavian countries. And if you divide Europe in striata, about 5 striates, you find that heart disease goes up and up and up, and it's worse in the Norwegian countries, where they get little of what ended up being called the Mediterranean diet, high fat, low sunlight exposure, vitamin D deficiency. If you look at countries around the Mediterranean, so Greece, Italy, France, Spain, Portugal, they have a common element that he called the Mediterranean diet. And in our studies looking at the epigenetic profiles of people, when we find people that have the most robust, positive, healthy expression of their epigenome, they're essentially on a modified Mediterranean diet. The other thing we know is that when you looked at long-lived cultures, the blue zones that have become popular, or cultures and sites where people live into their 90s and 100s, you find that their diets are largely Mediterranean diets. So in a nutshell, it's basically they consume fish for protein, not beef, not poultry, because beef and poultry takes a lot of intensive money and land to raise. It's a very expensive prospect to slaughter animals for food. So it's fish and it's organic. That they have high levels of cruciferous vegetables in their content. They're all physically active. They all have strong social bonds with each other. They do not fear death. You find people in their 90s and 100s do not dwell on dying or not. And when they do die, they die very quickly. So most of them die within 2 or 3 days. So the long, lingering morbidity, disability is almost absent in these cultures. All of their foods are clearly organic because they raise it themselves from their own soil. So these are the characteristics, and they all have olive oil in their diets. So these are some of the things that are characteristic and consistent with the Mediterranean diet. So it's the most well-researched, most documentation, best outcomes, largest number of people over the last 30 years of any diet that's ever been researched.
Well, that's very important information, and I'm really happy to be able to share it with our viewers, Ken.
Thank you.
Thank you once again so much for coming here to Albuquerque to share your wisdom and your knowledge.
Thank you very much. Really fun.
And thank you for being with us. Thank you.